Well, hello, my dear friends. Justyn Smith here, and I want to thank you so much for click and play today. Today we're looking at First Chronicles 21. We're given it the topic and title, Satan Provokes. Satan provokes. Now, what I want you to see in this first point is how Satan provokes the heart with pride. Satan allows you to be able to see a situation from the eyes of pride that says, I can do this. I can get away with this. That's how Satan wants you to view your situation, not with humility and the need to be dependent upon God, but with the opportunity to say, I can do this, I don't need God, or I can do this even if it's against God and what he has established. Look at the verse 1 and 2. Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. Now, before I read verse 2, understand that Satan is not tempting David to enter into some type of sin like we see in other places that, like you and I would consider, that's hideous, that's gross, that's against the covenant of marriage or against mankind, like you find David in another portion of his life. But right here, the provoking that Satan is doing is based upon the pride of David's heart to number Israel, to number them like a census. Now, before you think ill, okay, about a certain thought in a certain way to numbering, you must remember that God has given the book of Numbers, that it wasn't wrong in that idea of numbering, but yet at this point, it was a point of pride in numbering the people instead of what we would consider that which was righteous and that which was holy, and all the numbering and all the historical records that the book of Numbers gives to us in keeping track of the lineages and the histories of all mankind as it was. And then the people of God and how many were of the tribe of this and how many were of the tribe of that. So this is really an action of Satan. Satan that's provoking David. Now, we're going to point that out later, but Satan's not making David do this, okay? David's going to choose of his own free will to accept the provoking and then number the people. This goes to verse 2. So David said to Joab and to the rulers of the people, Go, number Israel from Beersheba even to Dan, and bring me the number of them to me that I may know it. David wanted to know. David wanted to understand. And it's based upon the provoking of Satan that he has this pride that's lifted up, which leads to point 2. Pride doesn't want to listen to the voices of reason. And this is where the rubber's going to meet the road, because most of us, we're not in the position of being a king who wants to know how many people do I have from Dan to Beersheba. Let me know the number. But notice what it says. And Joab answered, The Lord make his people 100 times so many more as they be. Don't worry about it. God's blessed you. But my lord the king, are they not all my lord's servants? Why then doth my lord require this thing? Why will he be a cause of trespass to Israel? So Joab understood it was a place of rebellion. It was a point of rebellion for David to do this. Number 3, remember, Satan didn't make David do anything. He just encouraged David's pride. Notice again in verse 1, Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. Verse 4, nevertheless, the king's word prevailed against Joab, wherefore Joab departed and went throughout all Israel and came to Jerusalem. Now, before I read the next verse, hand in hand with point 2 and point 3, where pride doesn't want to listen to the voices of reason. And Satan didn't make David, but David fell into the pride of his own heart. Satan encouraged him in that direction. I want to remind you that you've got voices of reason in your life. You've got voices of reason that are saying, don't do this, don't go there, do this. And the rebellion and the pride of your own heart is going to fight against the wisdom that God is trying to get your attention with, whether from his word or from the wisdom of another person. So as we see in this passage, the leadership of the king trumped what Joab said. And so Joab's going to go out out, and Joab is going to do what the king has asked him to do. Verse 5, Joab gave the sum of the number of the people unto David. And all they of Israel were 1,000, and 100,000 men that drew sword. And Judah was 400, threescore, and the 10,000 men that drew sword. Notice a fourth point. Division is noted between Joab and David, as David's pride put a wedge between what is wrong and what is right. And likewise in your life, there will be divisions within the congregations of believers when pride gets involved and in the way, whether it's leadership or somebody who's not in leadership at those churches. Pride is a destroyer of many people. Notice what it says in verse 6. But Levi and Benjamin counted he not. Joab did not count them, for the king's word was abominable to Joab. Joab did not like it one bit. Because he was his boss, he went forward and did it, but he did not like it one bit. So he did not count Levi. He did not count Benjamin, which there's history there of why that would be something that he would refrain himself from doing. So we notice there is now division between David and Joab because of the pride of David's heart in wanting to number the people. And I ask you, what divisions are you going to have in your family, in your churches, in your communities? Because we allow pride to get in the way, and I'm not budging. This is what I need to do. And other people see clearly through it. This is trespass. This is rebellion. We should not be a part of this. This leads to a fifth thought. God was displeased with David's decision in pride. Pride leads to destruction. Very clearly, verse 7, and God was displeased with this thing. And likewise, God is displeased with our pride. He's displeased with this, and it's such an abominable thing. It's something that God hates, the pride of life. Therefore, he smote Israel. There were repercussions because of David's pride. You see what I'm saying? Pride brings damage. Pride brings destruction. God was displeased with it. We ought to be displeased with our own pride. We ought to humble ourselves before God. Point 6, David understood his sin after destruction came. And isn't that like us sometimes? We don't really realize what we have done until the after effects. And David was mercifully given 3 choices because of his sinful pride. Now think about this. Okay, David is remorseful, David is repentant, David is sorry after he sees what he has done, which, hey, I'm glad he's been brought to this point. But just think about how much damage would not have been done if he just would have made the right decision in the first place. Notice the verses. David said unto God, I have sinned greatly, because I have done this thing. Okay, so David is admitting it. He is confessing it. But now I beseech thee, do away with the iniquity of thy servant, for I have done very foolishly. So notice how the Lord speaks. The Lord spake to Gad, David's seer, saying, Go and tell David, saying, Thus saith the Lord, I offer thee 3 things. Choose thee one of them, that I may do it unto thee. So Gad came to David, said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, choose thee either 3 years of famine, or 3 months to be destroyed before thy foes, while that the sword of thine enemy overtaketh thee, or else 3 days the sword of the Lord, even the pestilence in the land, and the angel of the Lord destroying throughout all the coast of Israel. Now therefore advise thyself what word I shall bring again to him that sent me. Now think about being David at this moment. I'm going to go back to our point slide. God was displeased with David's decision in pride. Okay? Pride leads to destruction. Our 6th point, of which we're dealing with right now, David understood his sin after the destruction came. He sought forgiveness, and David was mercifully given 3 choices because of his sinful pride. And now David is left in this decision that I'm going to read to you of 3. David said unto God. Now, could you imagine being put in this place? David said unto Gad, his prophet, his seer, I am in a great strait, okay? I wish I would have never done this, right? I am in a situation. Then he says, let me fall now into the hand of the Lord, for great are his mercies. But let me not fall into the hand of man. Now think about this. With the three choices that God gave to Gad to give to David, okay, David is choosing, I'm going to fall into the Lord's hand. He's merciful. Okay, the enemy is not merciful. And even though judgment must come, I know that the Lord of heaven is very merciful. I don't want to fall into the hand of man. So the Lord sent pestilence upon Israel, and there fell of Israel 70,000 men. Let that sink in for just a moment. 70,000 men. Oh, the number of men that I had just counted has now been cut away. Look at what God has done. Oh my, if I would not have fallen to my pride, if I would not have entered into the air and taken that which Satan provoked me in, we would not have suffered this great loss. When you think about it in your life, you apply it to your situation, and you recognize pride is a destroyer, which leads us to a seventh thought. Don't fall a victim to your own pride. No matter your position, that's what that should say, no matter your position. Any one of us can find ourselves in a position in life where we are making decisions against God in the pride of life, the pride of our own heart, and we are going to feel like it's the best thing for us to do right now. We got to be very careful. We got to be very aware, oh, to God, that we would understand the prideful decisions that we make before it leads to damage, and that we would humble ourselves before God. Now, of course, this message was titled Satan Provokes. That's how the chapter starts, okay? And our great enemy is going to do the best he can to lay a snare, to lay a trap, to prick, to prod, to provoke, and to bring us to a place where, there's a decision before us. And obviously, the more enticing decision, the one that lures us in, is the one that satisfies the pride, because Satan's not going to go in the direction of humility and fear of the Lord. It's going to be the exact opposite of that. David became a victim of his own pride, even though he was a king. He could do whatever he wanted, but yet he found out that before God he had done that which was wrong, and God would bring the pestilence. God would take the number down by 70,000 men. David would suffer loss not by the hand of the enemy, but by the hand of God, all because of his own pride. But listen, friends, David lived through this moment. Okay, David did not take his life because of his decision that brought the judgment of God. David would rise above it, and after a heart after God's own heart, he would humble himself. He would seek the face of God. He would know that God was in control and in charge. He would trust his life into God's hand, and he would move on, learning from this particular situation. May we learn from David. May we understand his testimony. May we say, okay, as much as possible, I want to have humility in my heart. I don't want to be selfish. I want to be selfless. And God, I need you to direct my next step, and I need to be willing to follow. I need to be willing to listen to the voices of reason and wisdom in my life, and I want to set my heart in a direction that would please you. Friends, thank you for joining us in 1 Chronicles 21, and I pray that as we move forward for the glory of God, that we would move forward in humility, in sincerity, in wisdom, in truth, because God is worthy of a life that's yielded to Him. I trust and pray that you'll join us for our next broadcast. Thank you for click and play. Have a blessed day.